Happy Thursday, everyone. Mika and Claude here from College Coaching Network. We just wanted to make sure that we checked in because it's been a while since we went live.
Yes, it
It's been a
has.
while. So we saw this, look, I want to say riveting, but interesting and disturbing article that CNBC actually came out with, and they're talking about college enrollment notched the largest 2-year decline in 50 years. In 50 years due to COVID. So we wanted to make sure that we chimed into this conversation and talked about this article and how it impacts our youth and generations to come financially with this decrease in enrollment. And hopefully we'll be able to provide some great information. Well, I know that we will, but we wanted to make sure that we had this conversation.
Yeah, we definitely need to have the conversation. And as if you don't mind too, as we go through it, let's display because I think it's crazy. We'll go online and you'll see articles, and sometimes we get so many things that hit us on our notifications that we're busy. We just don't pay attention to this. But there's some things going on, especially um, just for a lot of people that are trying to get their children to the next level. You're trying to get your students to actually achieve more in life than we have, right? That means any parent or any guardian, any person that's taking care of a student right now, the aim is to pour into them and give them the opportunity to have a better chance at life than we have. There's a lot of things that's happening right now that my generation, Mika, your generation has not experienced, right? I
Definitely not
was
a pandemic.
not a pandemic, right? And I know, I've talked to people and they talked about, I think with the swine flu and some other ones, other things that was going on. Um, I don't really remember that. I was probably too young. I was probably like 3 or 4 or 5 years old, I guess, back in during that time. But well, having my niece who couldn't go to prom because of the pandemic,
Mhm.
having seeing people that they couldn't walk because of the pandemic, or they're not able. Was it debutante ball?
Yeah. My daughter missed all of the above. Well, high school graduation was delayed by 2 months, I think. They had our graduation in June. And then debutante got canceled, prom, senior activities, all of that was no more.
No more, right? And so what happens is you start seeing people get to a place where they just get desensitized to all the things that's going on. But I'm telling you that if we don't pay attention to some of these things, what we may co-sign for as a parent could be very detrimental to 17 or 16 years that we've been really pouring into our children. So the article comes from CNBC. It says college enrollment notched the largest, as Mika was talking about, 2-year decline in 50 years due to COVID, right? What does this mean? That means that obviously people are taking gap years. They're
Mhm.
taking not just a gap year, they're taking multiple gap
Years.
years, right? And so we all know that when students decide not to go to college, and I get it, if you feel like you don't want your child to go away to that particular college because COVID and you got to make a life decision, I totally understand that, right? But
Mhm.
there's an economic aspect to the decision that I saw in this article that was very troubling. So as we go down just a tad bit.
Yes. So I just also want to make sure that we pointed out the two key points that are here. And it talks about almost 2 years into the pandemic, the enrollment rate is still falling. So that
Yes, it
means
is.
even today is still falling. And of course, graduation is upon us. So make sure, parents, that you're having those conversations with your student, because before we know it, they're going to be walking across that stage and eventually they will have to be able to sustain their own lifestyle as adults. So having the conversation about what direction they're going to take is critical right now more than ever. And then also it says that studies show that those who delay higher education, and this is what Claude was saying, pay an economic cost.
There was a quote that came from a guy that I think he was pretty wise, Sir Isaac Newton. He says, "An object in motion tends to stay
Emotion.
in motion."
Yeah.
Yes. So even if you choose not to go to that particular dream college, and you're saying because of the pandemic, they're going to be, why am I going to pay to send them all the way over here? And they're going to still do virtual learning. And it makes no sense to go all the way over there and they're just going to be in a dorm room doing this right now, like on a computer, right? So have them go to a community college, get those general electives out of the way. And
Mm-hmm.
then when they go up there, you've actually cut the cost of college because they don't have to pay room and board because they're still eating your food, right? And they're still staying in your house, right? Driving you bananas. But you can now just cover the tuition. And some state programs actually even cover that if you've done your community service hours. So you would probably want to check into your state to confirm that you've got those community service hours under your belt because you can get those 2 years covered. And in Missouri, you have A plus. So everybody that knows about that is 50 hours from the last time, but check with your school counselor, find out what those requirements are so you can get that money. But let's go back into this article. So it says college enrollment was supposed to bounce back this fall, but instead more students are still opting out. So as Mika's talking about, we're still seeing a trend spiraling in a negative direction where people are actually not going back to college. It's down 3.2% from the last time. When we see 3.2%, that doesn't really seem like a big number, like 3.2%. But we're talking about millions of students, right?
Yes.
So yeah. So and the last tally was 17.5 million. So you take 3.2% of that, then that number becomes a little bit bigger.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. So, and I know this is what jumped out to you in the article when you initially saw it. So as we go down, combined, again, we have a negative spiraling effect that's here. Yeah, but I think this here is new information. I think I glossed over it. I didn't catch this one here. So for starters, community college is significantly less expensive. At a 2-year public school, tuition and fees are $3,770. So basically less than 4,000 for just tuition and fees for junior college, like I was talking about, according to College Board, that's the national average. And then alternatively for state school, it's about 10,000 to go to a state school. So people are, if they're taking gap years, they're electing to go with the cheaper option with the junior college. But
Well,
this
they're
here,
even actually saying now with the pandemic, usually when there's an economic issue, it says that people transition from the 4-year college to go to those community colleges to subsidize the cost. But even now, the enrollment is also down in the actual community colleges as well, which is kind of
mhm.
scary.
So we'll talk about that here in a second.
Yes.
Yeah, so I know this jumped out to you because you brought this to my attention, so I'll hush on this part.
Yes. So the biggest thing that jumped out to me of this article is the fact that it talks about the earnings gap experienced by delayers compared with one-time enrollers is $41,000 for the first 13 years after high school graduation. Let's put that into perspective. So what they're saying is those that take a gap year, delay going to college, loses 41,000 a year for the first 13 years after high school. So that means you're missing out on $533,000 of your lifetime net worth or
Income, yeah,
earnings
income potential,
income,
uh-huh.
which is crazy. That's over $500,000 just by again taking those gap years or delaying getting a college education. That's not a small amount of money. That's a very
Not
nice home. that
Yes.
is investment money. That is a substantial lifestyle that you're missing out on being able to live because of the economic impact of not making those earnings. And I know Numbersville is Clyde thing, so I'd love to hear what you got to say about it.
Yeah, definitely. So you don't want to lose 500 over $500,000. I don't care who you
Who
are,
you are.
right? I don't care who you
Right.
are. You don't want to lose $500,000. But here's the problem right now. When you see a lot of students that are still first generation college bound students in 2022, right? So because you still have this situation here, when you go to college, the idea is for you to get a skill, right? For you to enhance your gift and your talent and to tap into your purpose and for you to get out into the marketplace and command money based upon whatever it is that you do, right? And so when you go into the marketplace and all you have is a high school education, and again, I'm not knocking this because we work with the labor union, right? The AFL-CIO is a big component of what we do. And we want to continue to grow that relationship. But even if you go into a trade, there's a skill and a certification that you have to have even before you jump all the way into that, right? To
Mm-hmm.
make some real money is my point,
Right.
right? And so if you're going to go into the marketplace and make 10, 14, 15, $16 an hour, that's not no money, right?
It
And
used to
then
be. Not,
it used to be,
it's
not now. Not when you go
not.
to different restaurants and I used to get a value meal for about $5. I
You
remember that
ain't
time.
getting it. Yeah.
Now that's not happening, right?
You
That's
paying
not
like
happening
$8, $9 for the average
for just
number
me,
one. Look,
right?
number one.
And I didn't even biggie size anything, right? It's just a regular
Right.
price, right?
Right.
So this is the issue is we have inflation, which we can maybe talk about that another time, but we have cost of goods and services going up. And if you
Mm-hmm.
have a person prematurely going into the market and they're not making the amount that they deserve to make, then they're not able to really get the income that they need to substantiate the increase in what we see in rising costs, right? So
Yes.
then what happens is this. If you don't, again, we work with schools. I gotta like really be political now, the more I'm talking in public, right? But we have to understand that the students are not receiving the financial literacy at the level that they need to receive it in the schools. So because they're not receiving it there, and I hate to say it because I'm in the church, and the churches are doing the best job that they can, but there's still a gap there. So that's why they have a lot of people coming in. The problem is a lot of the education that we do, because I've done it, I'm guilty of it. I'm a financial guy. I've done it. I educated to sell something.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever you somebody educates you in financial literacy to sell you something, you better look out because really they're trying to sell you something leading to what they benefit from, not what who you
You
benefit from,
benefit from. Mm-hmm.
right? And so what the problem is the students don't have financial literacy, the parents don't have financial literacy, and now you got a 17 or 18 or 19-year-old coming into the workforce with this money. They're living in the basement or they're living at their parents' house. They don't have any goals. They don't have any financial plan. And what do you think they're doing with their paycheck?
Spending it.
They're blowing all of it,
They're
right?
consuming.
They're just consuming it. They're buying the retro threes. They're buying,
There's a movie I can reference, but I won't. But they're consumers.
they're consuming, right?
Yes.
And so my point is when we see that the students are taking this gap year and they're causing themselves to have a $533,000 shortage, over $500,000 shortage, then we're hindering wealth in our community. I really want y'all to catch what I just said. Like we're hindering the ability to create wealth in our community. When you come out of college, if you don't have any student loan debt, now you're putting yourself in position that when you get your money, you can definitely be a contributor to your local church or whatever organization you want to give it to. You can
Mm-hmm.
actually now start to save, and then you can pay your bills. But then you also want to have some money to invest, right? But when you don't have these resources to invest, you're always going to be in a position where you're hand to mouth. And what I see, and I'll say this in conclusion, when you're hand to mouth, you're always blaming the man, you're blaming the job, you're mad because you're not getting an increase. And then when you get an increase, what do you think you do with that money?
Spend it.
You spend it again, right? I am trying to make sure that we understand as parents that when our sons or our daughters or our students come to us and they say, I'm looking to take a gap year, I would strongly suggest that this is the time that you lean in and you tell them, I understand you don't want to go to XYZ because of the pandemic, but let's truly consider going to a
Learn.
local community college, right?
Yes.
I would prefer that if you're comfortable with them going away, that they go away and go to their dream college and live their best life. But
Yes.
if that's not in your cards, they need to be in a community college, okay? And they need to have a job on top of that. Why? Because after you get through paying this little $3,000 or $4,000 at the community college, they got 2 more years left at a local 4-year college, and we want to, it, be it that they work a job or be it you make it their job to go after scholarships, whatever it is, you got to make sure that they don't have debt or minimum debt when they come out of college, right?
Mhm.
We, and I'm done in conclusion when I say this, we, and I'm sure you got something else. We have, as a culture, have to start thinking about how we create generational wealth.
Yes.
We have to put ourselves in a position that we're not going to live forever. So when the time comes that we are not here, did we make the lives of those we love better than than before we came? Did
Mm,
we create a legacy, not just in what we taught them, but what we gave them, to make sure that their chance at life was a little bit better than before you came here on the earth? And we have to start thinking that way instead of from a position of being a consumer. And
yes.
that's the problem that I see. And I'm telling you, this here is the foundation. Education is going to open up doors to create wealth. And if you
Yes.
start hindering children and making them get comfortable getting that little check every 2 weeks, and then feel like they got all this extra money because they don't have a light bill, they don't have a water bill, they don't have a cell phone bill, they eating your food every night, they feel like
Mhm.
they living their best life. But go take that same little check and go down there, and now you got to get your own place and pay your own rent, all these things that I just had to listing, and see how far that check goes.
Yes.
I'm
Very,
done.
very true. The thing I want to add, because again, we talked about, we understand, and that's why we do college and career readiness, that not every person, student, even adults, is college your next steps. We understand that. But it also talks about studies show that postponing higher education comes with a steep economic cost. Higher education sometimes may not be in traditional college classroom, but it is in that community college. It is in a technical program that you can learn a skill, because one of the things, and I've heard it all the times, I don't know who originated it, but niches equals riches, right? So if anything, make sure that your students aren't missing out on a whole year of learning a niche that's going to help them be able to get to their wealthy place. Because with seeing numbers like this and seeing that that gap is costing students well over $500,000 in the first 13 years after high school, though, that is like devastating numbers to me when I hear it. Because when you think about your first 13 years after high school, you could have been and purchased a home, you could start a business with that money, you can invest with that money. Like, that's not a small amount of income. 41,000 a year, that's a lot, especially for a new adult that's looking for their place out in the world. So, if anything, parents, have a conversation with your students to be able to put together a plan for their life, because sometimes they're not thinking of it like that because they're young, and maybe sometimes it's getting a mentor to have those conversations with them, because you know how we were as kids, your parents done said the same thing to you 10,000 times, and you like this with your parents. So maybe it's finding a mentor or someone that can help support them on their pathway, but don't not have the conversation with your kids and have them miss out on an economic opportunity that can affect them for the rest of their lives. So
Yeah.
that's why this article stood out so much for me, because this is a life hit. I mean, half a million
Yes.
dollars is not a small number. That
Not at
it
all.
hit home.
I'll say this in conclusion on my side, and I'm glad we got a chance to see the article, because it's crazy, because there's an old saying about, now I want to say, I'm getting older, so it is what it is. So it was the example where you had the pot, and they had the little frog inside the pot, and they turned the fire up a little bit
Mm-hmm.
at a time, and the frog never could tell what was going on. And by the time it got to the hottest part, the frog was boiling.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what happens when we make a small decision to stay out of school.
Yes.
You don't see that the fire is turning up on you become staying in poverty,
Yes. That's good.
right? You're going to stay in the poverty mind. You're going to stay in a poverty choices, poverty community. Like when you go to college, you get around people that you never met. There's
Yes.
diversity. You have I have lifelong relationships with people that I went to college with. They've introduced me to opportunities that I never could have created on my own. And so I'm telling you, like, it seems like a small decision, but that small decision could keep you in poverty. And so I am telling you right now, if you want to have more time to enjoy your family, more time to be able to be a leader in your community, don't don't just say I'm not going to go to college. Like, figure out what your next move is, and if
Mm,
you're trying to work a job or whatever and figure it out, have a plan with the money that you're making during that transition period, and don't give up on your dream. You
yes.
deserve to serve people in your dream. That's
Yeah.
all I got.
That's awesome. Thank you, everyone.